All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. It was a lot of fun. But now let's get right into the topic here, which what we're going to be talking about today is going full time dev,
Hmm.
because that's kind of what like you that's definitely what you've done, but it's also like a platform that you share with people and everything else. So I figured it'd be really helpful to like dig in a little bit further and
Yeah.
get a better understanding of that. So to kick off the question, this idea of going full time dev can be rewarding, yet very daunting to most people. So,
Hmm.
what's a good way to approach this so that the concept is less frightening but easier to visualize?
Well, here's a good metaphor. If you were to go to Vegas and gamble away some money,
Mm-hmm.
um, let's say you're going to go out with your buddies. Um, the way you approach that is you go, okay, how much money can I throw away? How much money can I just burn? You don't go to Vegas going, okay, I've got $5,000 in savings. That's all I've got. I'm going to go spend it and make some money. Like, that's a
Mm.
terrible way to do this. The way you should gamble away your money, if you're going to gamble, is to say, well, I could lose $1,000. I've got 10, maybe you got $10,000 in savings. I'm going to lose $1,000. And if I lose it, that's okay. The same needs to be true with how you start your game studio. And I don't know if this frustrates people or it's an overly simplistic way of thinking about it, but you should never jump into a venture as risky as game development, which especially like solo or indie game development is a
Mm.
very risky venture. So you should never jump into it saying, this is gonna be my career. I'm gonna make $1 million. It's always gonna pay off. You need to be willing to not only lose money, and by money, I mean, I guess your time, or maybe you spend a couple grand on getting some help or whatever. But yeah, you need to be willing to lose money, and you need to be willing to lose time, and basically sacrifice it on the altar of, well, your maybe it was your childhood dream, and say, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
So I mentor some people, and I always tell them that they're like, okay, when is it going to pay off? When is it going to pay off? And I just say, I don't know. So ultimately, my piece of advice is if you're not willing to lose some money, if you're not willing to lose some of your time, maybe that's your, Netflix and chill time.
Yep.
If you're not willing to lose that, you shouldn't be doing it because I can't promise you're going to go full time. I can tell you what I did to go full time and what some very very clear cut, um, tried and true tactics you can do. So the idea of going full time, it is daunting. And I've had people tell me, "How do I get over the fear? How do I get over the fear?" And I'm like, "You're not really going to get over the fear
Yeah.
until you start making some money." So if you're not a person who can't, I guess, walk into a dark room and just all you're thinking about is turning on the light, well, maybe this isn't for you. You've got to be okay with that feeling of, I don't know if this is going to pay off. I can't see my future. I have no idea what this is. And that's okay. And you learn to breathe and you learn to be okay with the process. Um, so that's the best. So from a mental approach, to answer your question, from a mental approach,
Mm.
the way to become less frightened is to just, here's a metaphor, touch the tarantula, hold the tarantula, let it crawl all over your face, and learn to deal with it. Because there's nothing else, there's no other better advice I think I can give. Because
Yeah.
the rest of them would just be kind of almost like washed down, artsy fartsy.
Yeah.
What's the word, like what gurus typically say, which is you can get all this money and you can make all this money. It's like, no, I'm going to teach you how to be fearless. That's what I'm going to teach you how to do first.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I very valid point, because here's the reality of that, Thomas just basically outlined is you provided a very good idea and how to create a proper mindset towards entering something like this, going full time.
Yep.
And let's face it, folks. for game dev, it's no different than anybody else wanting to be an entrepreneur. It's a roller coaster ride. It's there's so many factors of unknown, and yeah, you can put together plans and have goals and everything else, but regardless of all those things, it's still going to be unknown. So I love your approach to that because it's honest, it's sincere, and it's the complete truth. You don't know if you can't like put yourself into some of the scenarios that you outlined, then you might have to reconsider it. But doing that is ultimate. It's always going to be frightening, but it can make the process less frightening because you're learning, as you said, to be comfortable with areas that are most likely uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And just to clarify, when I say put a tarantula on your face, what I'm saying is facing a phobia. Now, if your phobia is, oh, I'm just really scared of getting a $100,000 loan from the bank to go full time. I say, wait, that's not a phobia. That's just logic. Don't do that. Don't do that. What I mean is, most of the time, what people's phobias are is like, it's not a phobia, but like the things that people are scared of is, what are people going to think?
Yep.
What are my parents going to think?
Yep.
Oh, do people think I'm silly? Oh, I don't want to post my first YouTube video, or I don't want to post my first like animated GIF on Twitter. I'm scared.
Yeah.
And I'm saying slowly dip your toes. It's like that What About Bob movie. It's like baby steps. Take baby steps into the dark.
Yeah.
And dude, I was just running through my budget today for my studio, and I'm spending way more money than I thought I was spending to keep this thing running. The ROI is like 2-to-1, so that's good.
Right.
But I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm like, I feel like I am on a ship in the middle of the fog in the ocean. I have no idea where I'm going, but for some reason, it's working.
Yep.
I'm slowly hitting my destination. So you've got to learn to breathe, take it easy, and almost file away your thought. My wife taught me this. She said, Thomas, put all of your little scared thoughts, all of the things that are frightening, put them in a mental folder, close that drawer, lock it up, and let's go get some pizza. Yeah. And you just learn to do that as an entrepreneur. You don't really have to do that you kind of have to do that when you have like a day job, but your boss is handling most of that stuff.
Yep.
You know? And when you're making a game, you are your own boss and you are an entrepreneur, even if you're on it with a team. So you've got to learn to just, I hate this word, but get a thick skin, toughen up.
Yep.
Because it's a rough road.
All right. So, this is really good because it really leads into another discussion point that I wanted to have with you, which is overcoming challenges. So that was one good example, but can you think of any other types of strategies that can help people overcome, especially when they're facing some initial challenges when they're just starting out on this venture?
Yeah. Money helps a lot. Money helps a lot. So and I hope I'm answering your question properly. People tend to just go, well, I'm not going to make money because I'm not smart. So I'm going to try and scramble to find all these other ways to find solutions. And what you end up doing is you end up burning yourself out because you're doing everything all the time. Yeah. And so what I teach and what I'll teach right now is there are 3 ways to make money before you even finish your game. There's 3 ways to get 6 figures in funding before you go full time. And what that means is all of those challenges, all of those crazy things that you're like, man, I can't do all this. You can actually go, well, I'll pay someone, a freelance fee of $6,000 to handle this stuff so that I don't have to. And so my 3 ways of making money are crowdfunding publishers/investors, and then also slowly building a social media army that will support you. And usually it ends up manifesting as an email list that you can target when you do actually launch your game. It's kind of like a Steam wish list, but it's actually an email list that you're in control of.
Yes.
So again, to recap, crowdfunding, which you can bring in 6 figures that way. Oftentimes with my students, it's like $20,000 so far because, sometimes a campaign doesn't do as well as you would want. But for me, it was six figures
Yep.
for both campaigns. So that will help me go full time. And that helped me not be so scared of all of these things I had to do because I could actually just outsource it. And again, the second funding technique is publishers. They're not as scary as you think, guys. Not every publisher is like straight from the pits of hell. Most publishers are actually pretty great. And then the third one is building a social media army on all platforms and converting that army into hard, solid email addresses that you store as a list, and then you utilize that list to sell your game. And you could even sell alpha access and start making money before you even finish your game. So those are my three ways of making money. And I actually have a webinar people can watch. It's free on my website, fulltimegamedev.com. It's totally free. It's not like gimmicky or anything. And they can just watch that and learn how to make money. Because once you have money, it's so frustrating because money gets such a bad rap. It's like, ooh, don't talk about money. No, money helps you immensely. It's going to change everything for you. And if you could figure out a way to make money before you finish your game, then, for God's sake, do it.
Yeah, and I want to point a couple things out there too that you mentioned. One, I was asking for some examples with initial challenges, but you notice how Thomas didn't necessarily give those. Do you know why? Because there's going to be any number of countless challenges that you face, or the emotions that you have, and everything else. The point being is looking at the initial. What can help move you forward, and boiling it down to just money and those three steps. And there's others out there too, but these are the ones that Thomas stands true to, has worked for him, has worked for his students as well, and it's just a much better way of visualizing, because at a high level, if you have a quick high level of looking out at these things, and then you start breaking them down, again, it puts things in a perspective where it's probably going to be more motivating. And plus, on the you said with social media or basically a community in your email list building, as that starts getting going, there's another factor that happens outside of the sales aspect, which is really important because, as we identified, money helps you move forward. But also, there's that motivational aspect of people following you and giving you support and encouragement. I mean, I can't think of anything better with getting money from and additional support from a community like that. And
yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because look, there's dozens of challenges that you're going to come across. And it is definitely countercultural for me to say this. Maybe it's not, I don't know. But most of those challenges can be solved with just money in the bank. And so, look, some challenges can include, well, I don't have enough time to make the models for my game, or, oh man, I'm not a good coder, or well, I don't have it. I don't have an audience. I don't have a press list. So how am I supposed to market my game? Well, all of those things are solved with financing.
Yep.
And so I'm not gonna you could write a book on every single challenge, or you could say, well, should you be handling those personally yourself anyway? Because if you read books like 80-20 Principle, you should be focusing on the 20% that's going to give you 80% of those great results. And so what are the 20% of things that you're really gifted at? And for me, it's like story building, or world building, story, atmosphere, and mood. Basically, like my skill sets that I've come to find out after 15 years, my skill set is I basically am a film director. That's kind of what I'm best at, even from making this my next game. And so what my point is I'm going to focus on that as my 20%. That's what makes 80% of the results for my games.
Yeah.
All of the other stuff, if I can afford it, I'm going to offload it to freelancers and contract workers. And I fully disclose this in all of my videos on YouTube. Felipe's doing the modeling, Hector's doing the sound, AJ's doing the code based. I've also got some other people I'm talking to for help as well. And it's not like I'm sitting here spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for this stuff. It's just like, hey, can you do 5 models for me for the weapons? And then you pay them, a cup like $500 or $2,000 or whatever. And so having a little bit of money can make things so much easier. Now, really quick before I get some people thinking, well, Thomas is just he's giving us a really blanket statement that's not possible. Well, that's why I turned around and said